Did you know that the Great Wall of China stretches over 13,000 miles, yet it failed to keep enemies out when guards left the gates open? This startling fact sets the stage for an intriguing question: what good is a fence, a wall, or a boundary if we fail to guard it properly? The truth is, no matter how strong our defenses are, if we don't stay vigilant, the enemy will find a way in. In life, especially in our spiritual journey, keeping our fences up is not just about building them, it's about guarding them, maintaining them, and understanding their purpose. Imagine a sheepfold surrounded by a sturdy fence. The shepherd knows wolves lurk in the shadows, waiting for a moment of weakness. The fence isn't there to restrict the sheep but to protect them. Yet, if the gate is left open, what happens? The wolves don't knock, they charge right in. This is the reality we face spiritually every day. Our fences, our boundaries, values, and commitments, are meant to protect us from harm. But are we guarding them, or have we left the gate open? Let's take a journey to the Garden of Eden, the first place where humanity failed to keep their fence up. God gave Adam and Eve a simple boundary: do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Genesis 2 verse 17. It was a clear and protective fence, but the serpent slithered in, whispering lies. Instead of reinforcing the boundary, Eve entertained the serpent's words, and Adam followed suit. The result? A catastrophic fall that introduced sin into the world. They didn't physically tear down the fence, they simply left it unguarded. Can you see yourself in this story? Maybe you've set boundaries in your life, but when temptation whispers, you find yourself stepping closer to the edge. Perhaps you told yourself, "I'll just take a peek," only to find that one compromise led to another, and before you knew it, the fence was irrelevant. Let's fast forward to Nehemiah. After the Israelites returned from exile, Nehemiah saw the broken walls of Jerusalem and recognized what they symbolized: vulnerability, shame, and neglect. In Nehemiah 2 verse 17, he rallies the people: "Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace." Nehemiah wasn't just rebuilding physical walls, he was restoring spiritual and communal boundaries. But the work wasn't easy. Sanballat and Tobiah, two enemies of the Israelites, mocked and plotted against them. Yet Nehemiah's response was firm: "We prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat," Nehemiah 4 verse 9. Do you see the balance here? Nehemiah prayed and posted a guard. Too often, we lean heavily on one side: either we pray without taking action, or we act without seeking God's guidance. Keeping your fence up requires both faith and vigilance. You can't simply build a fence and walk away, assuming it will guard itself. Now, let's add a bit of humor to lighten the mood. Imagine King Solomon, the wisest man in history, trying to explain boundaries to his 700 wives and 300 concubines. "Ladies," he might have said, "I need everyone to stick to their palace quarters. No crossing into the queen's wing." Can you picture the chaos? Yet, even Solomon, with all his wisdom, failed to keep his spiritual fence up. His many wives turned his heart toward other gods, 1 Kings 11 verse 4. It's a reminder that no amount of intelligence or status can replace the need for spiritual vigilance. Think about Samson for a moment, a man literally gifted with supernatural strength. God set a clear boundary for him as a Nazirite: no cutting his hair, no touching dead things, and no drinking wine. But Samson treated his boundaries casually. He toyed with Delilah, sharing the secret of his strength as though it were a game. The moment his hair was cut, his fence fell, and so did he, Judges 16 verses 19 to 21. Samson's story is both tragic and relatable. How often do we treat God's commands as negotiable, only to find ourselves powerless when the enemy strikes? Let me ask you this: what are the Delilahs in your life? What compromises are you entertaining, thinking they're harmless, while they're slowly eroding your defenses? Boundaries aren't just about keeping things out, they're also about keeping things in. Consider the parable of the prodigal son, Luke 15 verses 11 to 32. The younger son wanted freedom, so he stepped outside his father's protective fence, chasing wild living. It wasn't until he hit rock bottom, longing to eat pig slop, that he realized the value of his father's boundaries. When he returned home, his father didn't shame him. Instead, he celebrated his return, restoring him to his rightful place. The fence was always there, but the son had to choose to step back inside. Let's take a moment to challenge conventional wisdom. Society often tells us that boundaries are restrictive, that freedom means tearing down fences and living without limits. But let's flip the script. True freedom isn't the absence of boundaries, it's the presence of the right boundaries. Imagine a playground built on the edge of a cliff. Without a fence, children would be too afraid to play near the edge. But with a sturdy fence, they can run, laugh, and enjoy the space without fear. God's boundaries work the same way. They're not there to confine us, but to give us the freedom to thrive safely. Now, here's an unexpected twist. Sometimes, the hardest fences to maintain aren't the ones between us and sin, but the ones between us and toxic relationships. Think of Abraham and Lot. When their herdsmen quarreled over grazing land, Abraham wisely suggested they part ways. He said, "If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." Genesis 13 verse 9. Abraham understood that keeping peace sometimes means creating space. Are there relationships in your life where you need to build a healthy fence, not out of malice, but out of wisdom? Let's not forget Jesus, the ultimate example of boundaries. Despite his boundless love, Jesus often withdrew to lonely places to pray, Luke 5 verse 16. He set boundaries around his time, choosing moments of solitude to reconnect with the Father. He also set boundaries in relationships. When Peter tried to dissuade him from going to the cross, Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Get behind me, Satan." Matthew 16 verse 23. Jesus knew his mission and wouldn't let anyone, not even a close friend, derail him. So, how do we keep our fences up in a practical sense? First, identify your boundaries. What values, commitments, and standards has God called you to uphold? Second, inspect your fences regularly. Are there areas where you've grown lax or allowed compromises? Third, guard your gates. Be mindful of what you allow into your life, whether it's through entertainment, relationships, or habits. Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Here's a powerful revelation to leave you with. Your fence is not just about protecting yourself, it's about protecting your purpose. When you let down your guard, you don't just risk harm to yourself, you risk derailing the mission God has entrusted to you. Imagine if Nehemiah had ignored the broken walls of Jerusalem. The city would have remained vulnerable, and God's people would have continued in disgrace. But because Nehemiah took action, the walls were rebuilt, and God's name was glorified. As you reflect on this message, ask yourself, where is my fence broken? What steps can I take today to repair it and keep it strong? Remember, keeping your fence up is not a one-time act but a daily commitment. Pray for wisdom, stay vigilant, and trust that God will honor your efforts. Now is the time to act. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs encouragement. Let's rebuild our fences together, one brick at a time. Like, share, and subscribe to spread this message of hope and protection. Your purpose is too valuable to leave unguarded. Keep your fence up.